Welcome back. We now move on to Unit 2, Lesson 1. In Lesson 1, we focus on the collection discipline and define it. Also on the factors that influence collection, and we focus on 4 different collection methods: IMINT, SIGNINT, and HUMINT. Within HUMINT, we are going to look at clandestine operations, both under official and unofficial cover. We define OSINT, and then we move into a summary and conclusions of this lesson. What is the collection discipline? The collection discipline is the method by which intelligence is collected and analyzed to obtain actionable intelligence. Collection is determined by what is being sought, or the scope, and the ability and capacity to acquire it, or the method. The USIC collects domestic and foreign intelligence, and there are several direct or indirect factors that drive and affect the scope and method or methods of the collection discipline. The driving factors of the collection discipline include the budget. It is incentive or restrictive. It depends on the money that is allocated and appropriated for the particular intelligence requirement. The collection capacity determines the scope and the methods. The threat level increases or decreases the scope of the method. And the priorities determines the requirements in the timing of the scope and the methods used. We now focus on Imagery Intelligence, or IMINT, and the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO. The strengths are: it provides remote coverage, utilizes specific or multiple systems, identify large objects or terrain changes, provides high-resolution imagery, has very low risk of casualties, and provides graphic and compelling evidence. What are the weaknesses? Satellite capabilities are very expensive. There is a time delay from the development of a satellite to its launching and its use. They have no immediate replacement. They depend on backup systems. The resolution may be insufficient. This may be overcome by the Gorgon stare or the drones, that because they can hover over a specific area, they can provide images that may have usually have better resolution than the previous resolutions available through other means. They require specialized expertise to decipher and read the images. They provide a snapshot at one particular time and place. Again, this may be overcome by the ability of the surveillance drones that, as I said, can look and monitor a whole area over an extended period of time. They provide for change over time analysis. This is how an area can change over a long period of time. It is time consuming and costly. Also, the enemy may also have monitoring satellites, or the drones may fall in enemy hands. We move on to Signals Intelligence, or SIGINT. This is done by the National Security Agency and the Central Security Service. What are their strengths? They use various collection platforms: ships, planes, ground sites, satellites. They are very good in intercepting and identifying targets. It has metadata capabilities available worldwide. They have almost unrestricted collection capabilities all over the world. They are very good about insights into indicators and actual plans. They are very good at advance warning, and they are usually very low risk. What are the weaknesses? It requires communications to intercept. that somebody has to be talking, communicating with somebody to be intercepted. There are difficulties in encryption and in landline infrastructure. The overcollection of data hinders the identification of critical communication. The complexity of targeting criminal and terrorist cells is compounded by the vast amounts of data collected. The denial and deception disrupts and the distract intercepts may not be that reliable if they are needed almost immediately because they need corroboration. It requires multiple foreign language capabilities, including harder to acquire local dialects, and it requires expensive technology and large secure facilities. HUMINT is carried out by the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Clandestine Service. The purpose of HUMINT is to recruit foreign nationals to spy for the U.S. government. The National Clandestine Service coordinates the foreign activities of the USIC. The recruitment process in HUMINT involves the following: targeting and spotting. This is the identification of potential asset with access to the desired information. The assessment is to determine if the individual is susceptible to recruitment. Enticement determines what the individual expects in return for the service and the risk that the individual will take. The controller and handler is who controls the asset and who deals directly with the asset. And the termination, when, where, and how to terminate a relationship. This involves the protection of the operation and the asset. Most of the time, the protection of the asset is determined by the integrity of the mission or operation. The integrity of the mission of operation takes precedence over anything else, including the protection of the asset. What are the strengths of HUMINT? Obtain more complete insight into a government, criminal, and/or terrorist cell. Provides advance warning of denial and deception. Provides information usually unavailable through SIGNINT, and it has relative low cost depending on the asset's target and location and the risk the asset will take and the level, quality, and reliability of the intelligence that the asset will provide. What are the weaknesses? It requires direct personal contact between the handler and the asset. Just telephone conversations will not do. This involves a high risk for the handler and the asset. The asset can be deceptive, it can be a double agent. Protecting the asset's identity is crucial to success. But, as I said before, the integrity of the mission is paramount. The analyst may devalue or overvalue the information. It depends on how much the analyst knows about the asset. There is a potential credibility gap, and the analyst is not informed of what that gap is or might be. The source is limited to certain types of information, those that the source has access to. And information sharing with other agencies may not be effective because the receiving agency may have a different impression or assumption as to the reliability, credibility, and value of the intelligence provided. And there might be communications link breakdowns between the asset and the handler. What are the requirements to become a clandestine service officer? The service officer is required to identify, assess, and recruit assets. And they have to be very good about this. They have to learn to operate in a foreign environment, meaning they have to know that environment like the back of their hands. It must have mastery of foreign language and culture. Most of the time, cannot even have an accent. Must have mastery of the operating environment. He has to know where they are working, or she must have known the ins and outs of the territory where they are doing their work. It has to conduct, detect, and evade surveillance. It has to have expertise with various types of equipment, and must operate within a cover story. That cover story may be official or non-official. The strengths of an official cover story. It is low cost, depending on the location and the asset. It has easy connection to the U.S. government overseas offices and operations, and allows for deeper questioning, surveillance, and monitoring because it has all the resources of the U.S. government. The weaknesses are the embassy posting draws attention on the clandestine services offered. The clandestine services officer. In many countries, if not all, anybody from the U.S. posting as a representative of the U.S. Department of Commerce is automatically identified, perceived, or assumed to be an agent of the CIA. It has increased risk of detection, limits the movement outside assigned areas. If the embassy of the consulate says you don't go there, you just don't go. Foreign officials are reluctant to share information because, again, they are making assumptions and they don't know who is who. And often hinders the ability to serve in an unofficial capacity. Once you are identified as being a member of the U.S. government, it's very difficult to become a civilian. The exception are the U.S. government contractors, prime or sub, private security companies, and law enforcement agencies. The strengths of an unofficial cover from a clandestine services offer is that the person has no official connection to the USG. Therefore, it has ease of ability to meet with assets, there is no suspicion. There is ease of ability to move throughout the country, the ability to speak freely with individuals, provides opportunity to influence others, and usually is very likely to receive information that is not deceiving. What are the weaknesses? No matter how much of a civilian that person might be, it has to have a cover story. He or she is prohibited for using some jobs as cover, with the exception is the U.S. corporate executives. Many corporate executives are excellent clandestine services officers operating on the non-official cover. Cannot make overt contact with superiors within the USIC. It's a high risk because it's done in situ. It has to be done within that particular environment, and it carries the potential to embarrass the U.S. government if caught. For example, the Eugene Hessenbusch affair, which really led to the disclosure of the Nicaraguan Contras. You can Google this. It's actually very interesting. Dangles are used to unmask non-official officers. A dangle is a person who claims to have an interest in defecting to a foreign intelligence agency. And also, it may have interaction with questionable individuals that may put the clandestine services officer at risk. What is open source intelligence? It is defined as predominantly a human activity. OSINT is any intelligence collected and analyzed from many non-classified sources. The emphasis is in non-classified. The sources are openly available, and therefore, that is where it takes the name. The U.S. National Open Source Center is a CIA intelligence center. The sources are as varied as they can be. Media such as TV, print, internet, radio, social media, you name it. Public data such as government reports, hearings, political debates, interviews, conversations. Professional and academic conferences, associations, academic research. Private drones, Pretty soon they are going to be in private hands if they are not already there, and personal networks and relationships. What are the strengths? Open accessibility to large amounts of information. It is harder to use for denial and deception given the diversity of sources. It's harder to control the sources. You cannot control the internet. You cannot control conversations. It's a clearer indicator of public opinion. Is a low cost and relative low risk, except for the uninformed disclosure by the source. What are the weaknesses? There is often an overwhelming volume of information, so it's different to determine what is relevant or irrelevant. It challenges the value of information. It's often difficult to ascertain the credibility of the sources. It has no dedicated collector, processors, or exploiters, with the exception of government contracts given for special OSINT projects. Non-classified information of collection in the initial stages. However, very often, it is classified as findings and analysis progress. What we cover in Lesson 1. The collection methods and challenges to collection, strengths and weaknesses, the NRO and IMINT, the NSA, NSSS, and SIGNINT, the CIA and the NCS and HUMINT, the clandestine services officers, official and non-official cover, OSINT and HUMINT, how we defined OSINT, and then we move to a summary and conclusions. The conclusion: governments must utilize multiple types of collection techniques depending on the scope and objectives of the operation. Difficulty in determining how much collection is too much. Intelligence deals with varied degrees of uncertainty, therefore it requires diversified approaches. The USIC cannot answer every demand. It lacks capabilities to meet every requirement. The intelligence community must weigh the cost of obtaining the information versus its value and whether it is actionable, meaning whether that information becomes actionable intelligence, which is the ultimate objective. Strengths and weaknesses of scope and methods must always be considered to devise strategies to overcome them. Thank you for attending the lecture. I hope it was useful to you and applicable to your daily activities. I will see you in Lesson 2. Thank you.